Closed captioning of this program is made possible by the Fireman's Fund Foundation.
Reporting from Tampa, I'm Belva Davis at the Republican National Convention, where delegates rallied behind their candidate.
I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
California delegates pledged to boost Republican turnout for the presidential election in an overwhelmingly blue state and across the country.
The Tea Party is mobilizing to help get out the vote. We're going to Reno. We're calling it Nobama, Nevada.
And party leaders outlined their strategy.
Nancy Pelosi declared us a battleground state, so I think the most important thing I can do is make sure we bring home those congressional races.
Also, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice on a Romney administration's foreign policy.
After the election, I hope that as a country, the President and the Congress together will undertake immigration reform, because it's something that we have to do at the federal level. The states really can't have their own immigration policies.
Coming up next. Good evening. I'm Belva Davis, and welcome to this special edition of This Week in Northern California. It's been an exciting week here in Tampa, reporting from the Republican National Convention. I've spent most of my time hearing from the California delegates about their hopes for a Romney-Ryan administration.
I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney's acceptance speech Thursday reinforced his campaign's primary goal, keeping the issue of jobs and the economy front and center in the political debate.
I have a plan to create 12 million new jobs.
It's a message that appeals to members of the largest delegation at the convention.
California, the state that gave America and the world the inspirational leadership of Ronald Reagan, proudly casts all of our 172 votes for Governor Mitt Romney.
We asked former California Governor Pete Wilson what Mitt Romney would do for the Golden State if elected.
Well, I will say that California needs to help itself, but if you help the national economy, you're going to help 13% of the nation's people who live in California.
Earlier this month, Romney slammed California, comparing it to failed European economies like Greece and Spain. Party leaders echoed that tone during the delegation's kickoff event Monday morning.
California is not competitive. California is losing good jobs every day. No corporate executive of a major S&P 500 or Fortune 500 company is right now seriously considering moving their headquarters to California.
California is at the bottom of every relevant economic measure, you name it. When it comes to unemployment, the housing bust, we were voted the worst state in the country to do business in.
House Majority Whip Kevin McCarthy placed much of the blame on the Democrats in power in Sacramento.
I met with the governor. I said, Mr. Governor, I lived in California my entire life. I'm frustrated. I watched us go from first to last. You know what Governor Brown said? We're not all the way last. That's his answer.
Besides the chance to mix and mingle with party leaders, delegates came seeking inspiration for the tough battle ahead as their party struggles to stay relevant in an overwhelmingly blue state.
We know California is an uphill climb for Mitt Romney, the same way New Jersey is an uphill climb. But that does not release you from your obligation. There is still plenty for us to do for Governor Romney and for Congressman Ryan over the course of the next 70-plus days. It's time to get to work.
The voter registration in California for Republicans has dropped to just a little over 30%, making it difficult for them to defeat Barack Obama. But like their colleagues in red states, California Republicans are doing all they can to deliver the country for Mitt Romney.
The Tea Party is mobilizing to help get out the vote. We're going to Reno the end of September and the end of October. We're calling it Nobama, Nevada.
California Republican Party Chair Tom Del Beccaro revealed his game plan.
Nancy Pelosi declared us a battleground state, so I think the most important thing I can do is make sure we bring home those congressional races and hold on to the state Senate.
Some notable California Republicans skipped the convention, opting to stay home and campaign. But Elizabeth Emkin, running against Senator Dianne Feinstein, decided to attend at the last minute. What still gives you hope that you can defeat Dianne Feinstein?
Well, the latest polling gives me a great deal of hope. She's polling at the lowest of her career, mid-40s. I'm 12 points behind her with over 20% undecided. That sounds like a horse race to me.
Another congressional hopeful who made the trip, Lodi native Ricky Gill, who at 25 has become a rising star for the party and used his time in the national spotlight to talk about how the Republican Party can appeal to minority voters.
My parents immigrated to the Valley from India and Africa with only their love for each other, a strong work ethic, and the enduring desire to pursue their American dream. We need a new generation of leadership to chart the path, to fight for policies that create jobs rather than red tape, and to help small businesses succeed.
I represent, a community right now that is really searching for something better. We have double the national unemployment in that district. We had the biggest municipal bankruptcy in the country. People know that what we have tried has failed. You send the same people to Washington, you cannot expect a different result.
Like Gill, Delegate Zainul Abidin is hoping to convince other Asian Americans to swing to the Republican side.
As an Asian American, as a minority in this country, we own a lot of small businesses. And we ran a deficit now. We are going down. And I think under this new leadership, Romney and Ryan, these small businesses will come up and make a difference and again grow this economy.
What most delegates did not see this week were groups of protesters who were kept far from the convention site by a massive police presence. The exception? San Francisco-based Code Pink, who unfurled banners during Paul Ryan's speech and staged a mock arrest of Condoleezza Rice.
Arrest Condoleezza Rice! GOP, can't you see? Women want equality!
And now for analysis of some of the week's highlights with a uniquely California perspective. I'm joined by Carla Marinucci of the San Francisco Chronicle, Doug Sovereign of KCBS Radio, and John Bayard of KNX Los Angeles. So, we've all been here for this unpredictable week. Carla, why don't you start us off? Do we now know who Mitt Romney really is?
Well, I think we saw, Belva, the reset of the Mitt Romney campaign tonight. They needed to introduce him as somebody other than a millionaire, Bain, corporate raider, job outsourcer. And we saw it all week long at the convention. Different people, friends, his wife, Ann, delivering a great speech, trying to show, sort of fill in the picture of who Mitt Romney was. And I think you saw it at the final night when you had members of his church come forward, his family. That is the goal of the Republicans right now, to introduce him to America.
Doug, do you, John, you feel that you now know?
Well, I don't know that we know who Mitt Romney is. Do we ever really know who any of these men or women are? What we know is who they want us to think he is. We know who he wants America to see him as, which is a family man, a church man, the man who's going to turn the country around, a seasoned, experienced business leader. I found it a little odd, some of the messaging during the week. I didn't think it was as unified as we often see and as well coordinated as we usually see from the Republicans. And although the speeches from his fellow churchgoers and people who he's helped throughout his life were very moving and effective, I thought, I also found it a little odd that if you have to present a parade of character witnesses essentially defending you and saying, the Mitt Romney I know is a wonderful man, he really is a decent guy, then you're starting at a deficit, and he clearly knows he has an image problem.
Well, let me turn to John, because he's from Los Angeles, and so the biggest star from Los Angeles that came to tell us who Mitt Romney really is was Clint Eastwood. How did that work out?
Well, that was a very interesting presentation on stage. It was a little bit disjointed, but I talked to the delegates afterward, and they said they loved it. They loved Clint Eastwood. They liked that he kind of mocked Obama, Mr. Obama, and I think it went over well. I was actually surprised because I've seen some things on the internet that basically slammed him for the presentation, but they seem to enjoy it.
But on TV, this was kind of make my day, ruin my speech for Mitt Romney because he went over time. He was disjointed, and I think the headlines are going to be more about this bizarre moment at a political convention.
Well,
the delegates did enjoy it. They loved Clint Eastwood.
They did love it.
A lot of them couldn't hear what he was saying, but when I talked to them, they enjoyed him. But on TV, I don't think it went over that well. It was rambling. It was all ad-libbed. And I can tell you that backstage, the Romney team was fuming. They had allotted 3 minutes for Clint Eastwood, and he went 12 or 13. It threw Romney's speech past the deadline.
It
was just...
This is supposed to be about jobs and the economy. So you have had a unique experience about jobs, Jed.
Well, as far as the small business angle here at the convention, yeah. You know, for those of us who've been to these conventions for many years, you always see that marketplace where they have all the vendors. They sell the campaign buttons and the memorabilia, and they set up at each convention. They'll be there in Charlotte. They've been at Republican and Democratic conventions in the past. But at this one, the campaign that is ostensibly all about small business, that has been slamming President Obama for being hostile to small business, the Romney campaign actually made its own merchandise here and had a monopoly because they wanted to maximize their revenue. So they barred the very small business merchants who they say in their convention speeches they're here to help and that they'll do a better job protecting as president and vice president.
And you know, Belva, I have to say, throughout the week, the Republicans were slamming Obama on, you didn't build that right. statement that he made. I think what was striking was we didn't hear a lot of detail from any of them on how they would change the picture. Romney said he would deliver 12 million jobs in his first term. But how exactly, we didn't really hear, and neither from Paul Ryan did we hear.
Well, it was interesting in talking to some of the delegates afterwards, though. They said they felt that he did lay out some detail of a plan of what he's going to do, the 5 points at the end, and that kind of thing. And so they walked away feeling that he did deliver a message.
And the other message that the campaign was trying to get over to us is that, yes, they are really high on women. They have women in positions at every level, and in fact the candidate's mom ran for office with the full support of the father. So how did they do on the women's issue and the immigration? Those are the two things they seem to have worked on hard in programming.
Well, we should let the woman answer first.
I think women were some of the strongest speakers, the strongest moments in this convention. When you talk about Condoleezza Rice, I mean, the delegates were wild about her. They're already talking about her as being the next governor of California, etc. But, you know, women all around this hall heard from Susanna Martinez, another great speaker. And, of course, Ann Romney was the highlight for many of them.
We're going to take a few seconds to close this off before we hear from one of the celebrities that you just talked about.
I think I wanted to say that in the speech tonight, I got a text from my wife afterwards saying, I want a rose every day. Mitt Romney told that story, and that was one personal touch that we heard from him. We didn't hear a lot of that, but it apparently made its mark with women.
I thought the women were very strong, but I just think that, again, it shows that sometimes they're trying a little too hard. He knows where his deficits are, and it was obvious when he was trying to correct them.
Carla, you spoke about Condoleezza Rice. Well, yesterday I spoke with her also. Condoleezza Rice, a Californian and former Secretary of State under George W. Bush, her passionate speech was one of the highlights here.
And on a personal note, a little girl grows up in Jim Crow Birmingham, the segregated city of the South where her parents can't take her to a movie theater or to a restaurant. But they have her absolutely convinced that even if she can't have a hamburger at the Woolworth's lunch counter, she could be President of the United States if she wanted to be, and she becomes the Secretary of State.
First of all, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, in your speech you said the question of the hour is, where does America stand? And in a recent op-ed piece, you questioned whether re-engagement with Baghdad was something that the country should be concentrating on.
Yes.
Do you think that troops should be sent back into Iraq?
Oh, I absolutely do not think we need to send troops back to Iraq. We have done our job in Iraq in the military sense, but I really mean engagement diplomatically, engagement through the economy engagement with the people of Iraq, because Iraq has very troublesome neighbors. And so a successful Iraq has the potential to change the face of the Middle East. And so our engagement should be deep, but it should be political, diplomatic, social, economic.
How do you think the rise of China will or does have an effect on the economic health, say, of California?
Well, certainly the rise of China as an economic power is one of the major stories of the late 20th and early 21st century. I was in China in 1988 in Beijing, and the streets of Beijing were a competition between a few horse carts, a few automobiles, and a lot of bicycles. That's not the China of today. It's been an economic miracle. But China, it can be an economic miracle that is good for the international economy. We should be able to have the Chinese have freer trade so that we can get our exports into China. We need robust Chinese economic growth to help fuel the international economy. But we also need China to play by the rules, and that's the hard part. But a free and fair relationship with China certainly benefits the American economy.
China's moving vigorously across the world, signing agreements with nations in Africa and South America. What do you make of all of that?
Well, the Chinese are doing really what we should be doing, which is that they are pressing very hard to find free trading partners across the world. That's how you build the environment for your own exports and stimulating your own economy. So we need a much more robust trade agenda. Rather than criticizing the Chinese for taking advantages of the possibilities of free trade.
The question of immigration is a high one throughout this, and has been throughout this whole election season. You didn't receive an awful lot of applause when you made your comment about a humane immigration policy. What do you advocate, and do you think that the party is in line with your thoughts?
Well, we really do have to have comprehensive immigration reform. And we have to have it for three great important reasons. Number one, we do need to secure our borders. And that is something that I think everybody agrees on. Secondly, we all know that this is an economic benefit. Immigration brings people who need to make $5, not 50 cents, and agriculture is dependent on those people. We also know that at the so-called high-end, in places like Silicon Valley, across the Bay in Berkeley, we know that people are coming here as engineers and scientists, and they're helping to fuel that knowledge-based revolution that indeed California is leading. And so we need the economic benefits of immigration, but more than anything, we are a nation of immigrants. And after the election, I hope that as a country, the President and the Congress together will undertake immigration reform, because it's something that we have to do at the federal level. The states really can't have their own immigration policies.
You were quite emotional when you spoke about education. You said that the failure of educating minority and poor students from K to 12 was threatening the very fabric of our society, and you called it a civil rights issue.
Absolutely, it is a civil rights issue, because you cannot take advantage of the benefits of being American, whether you came here from another place or were born here, if you do not have a quality education. And I think it's especially a civil rights issue for the poorest kids who are trapped in the worst schools. The truth is, people opt out of bad schools if they have the means. They send their kids to private schools, or maybe they go to a district where the schools are good. And the people who are trapped there are the poorest. That is the height of inequality.
We're at a time now in a season, particularly in the state here, Florida, and other key swing states where voting rights are being challenged. What's your feeling? What's your reaction?
Well, I understand that people want to make sure that there's no voter fraud. I understand that. I also understand the argument that there ought to be some way of proving that you are a voter and that you, through an ID of some kind. Let's give people time to do that. Let's make it easy to get identification. I don't like very much the argument that somehow minorities can't get an ID. That seems to infantilize, to me, frankly, minorities. We can do this. But people have to be given time. We have to find a way to make it easy. The states are reacting because the federal government has not. And we do need to solve this problem, but let's give people time and let's do it in a way that doesn't make it difficult for people to exercise their franchise.
Finally, the question of women in the party.
Yes.
And their role in the party.
Yes.
And the reputation the party has built over some remarks made here and there that there's a war against women going on.
Yes, there's no war against women. This is hyperbole of the worst sort. We shouldn't caricature each other in this way. There are people who have strong beliefs about issues of abortion, about life, about choice, strong issues. Let's respect each other. This is a party that has a lot of powerful and strong women within it, and many of them who have views that may be different than my own. But we respect each other. I feel welcome in this party, and I think it's time to stop this caricature and hyperbole.
Well, I think I would be punished if I didn't ask you about Augusta, the National Golf Club, that you broke another barrier. Had you applied? Did they come after you, or what happened?
No, it was really quite a surprise, kind of out of the blue. Augusta's a private club, and so they have their own processes. But I was honored to be asked to join Augusta. As I said some time ago, it's a private club, but we all know that the face of America, the face of everything is changing, and so it was obvious that the face of golf was going to change too. I am honored to be there. Augusta does a lot of good work with growing the game among youth. That's something that I would like to see, because I'd like to see a broadening of the base of people who play golf in terms of color and gender. But mostly I'm really looking forward to trying to improve my short game so that I can play Augusta well.
Dr. Rice, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, in that conversation, we touched on some hot issues, the position of the Republican Party and women on voter suppression. She seemed to be supportive of most of these policies, and I was a little bit
I think
surprised.
Condoleezza Rice really resonates with these delegates here and with Republicans across the country. But I mean, talking to the California delegates, as I mentioned, they're already talking about perhaps her running for office. What we saw here from her this week was just a strong a communicator, somebody who was up there again without a teleprompter, just knew how to get the Republican and Mitt Romney message across.
She gave a very strong speech. She is a rock star of this party. They love her. But, you know, she's a party woman. She has always been a staunch defender of those she's worked with. I'm not surprised that she is
let's
bothered
talk about another rock star.
by those policies.
The Florida native who came on very strong.
Marco Rubio.
Yes, Marco Rubio.
You know, he's poised, he's crisp, he's confident. He was one of the stars of this week, there's no question. We saw a lot of the bench of the Republican Party, the next wave. Chris Christie, Marco Rubio, maybe Jeb Bush, I don't know, maybe not Jeb Bush at this point. Rubio, I think, stood out among them.
Oh, I thought Rubio's speech was reminiscent sort of Barack Obama's speech in 2004 when he grabbed the attention. It was a very compelling speech, and I think the best speech overall of the convention.
And it was very strong leading into Mitt Romney's. I mean, he really captured the crowd there. I mean, one of the things I was thinking was, wow, I mean, how is Mitt Romney going to sound after Marco Rubio's done?
A high bar for Mitt Romney.
What we didn't talk about, though, is the protest that was expected here.
Mm-hmm.
We know about the storm, and that threw schedules off. But are you surprised that there wasn't more people on the streets? Or
I've got to ask, whatever happened to Occupy? I mean, we thought, oh, this will be the first convention with Occupy Wall Street. I mean, I was prepared for big protests here. I've never covered a convention where I didn't have to run out of the hall at some point because something crazy was happening on the street. It didn't happen here. I mean, there were a few hundred people. There were the code pinks inside.
Only a handful of arrests.
Nothing
and
major.
I think the most interesting thing was we saw every night code pink activists inside the convention hall and only feet away.
From the Bay Area.
Yes, from the Bay Area, and only feet away from the speakers.
Right.
They managed to create more interest on the protest side than just about any other group.
Well, also because of the area outside, the way it was locked down so tightly, people couldn't even get close here. Right. So it surprised me a little bit tonight, and maybe I shouldn't have been, when the protesters kind of disrupted things inside the hall during Mitt Romney's speech. And of course, you couldn't see it on TV, so people didn't know that. but it distracted people inside the hall for a couple of minutes.
And the weather kept the protests down a little bit. I mean, it rained the first couple of days, but I wonder if there'll be bigger protests if more people on the left are maybe angrier with Barack Obama right now than they are even with the Republican Party.
One of the protest leaders said that over $50 million had been spent on security and on police officers to keep this area as calm as we saw it. And so, therefore, we can understand what happened. It was even difficult for us getting in and out of here. Well, that is all the time we have. I want to thank you, Carla, and thank you, Doug, and thank you, John, for being with us this evening. I'll be reporting from the Democratic Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina next week. I'll speak with California delegates, and including Senator Dianne Feinstein and Attorney General Kamala Harris. I hope that you will join us, and of course, you can catch us anytime at kqed.org/thisweek. I'm Belva Davis. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Funding for coverage of the 2012 election campaign comes from the generous support of the following donors.
It's been called a critical battleground in the presidential election. Charlotte, North Carolina is the location for this year's Democratic National Convention. But with some Democrats bowing out to fight election battles in their home states, can the party unite to create a comprehensive platform? And what will it mean for Bay Area residents? I'm Belva Davis. I'll be reporting from this year's convention on This Week in Northern California, Friday night, September 7th at 7:30.